We'll now move on to the next speaker. The next presentation is an invited talk about photovoltaic research, what could be done next, by Professor Juergen Werner of the University of Stuttgart. Professor Juergen Werner is a member of the International Advisory Committee of this project. He is currently the director of the Institute of Photovoltaic at the University of Stuttgart. His research interests widely covered in the fields of solar cells, such as crystalline silicon solar cells, add-on process for solar cell production, thin film solar cell, polycrystalline semiconductors, Schottky contacts, heterojunction, etc. Please, Professor Werner.
I'm doing much less than what you said. Okay, the title of my talk, what could be done next? I thought if I write what should, I switch it on, okay. What should be done next, or what could be done next, I leave it to your interpretation. I describe the present situation, how it is in Germany, and how it could be, in my opinion, also in Japan. The electricity cost in Germany for photovoltaics electricity for large area system is 8 cents per kilowatt hour. This is about 10 yen per kilowatt hour. And this is mainly due to the fact that photovoltaic systems, the installation is much cheaper in Germany. It's about 1,000 euros per kilowatt peak. And based on these systems with 15% efficient modules, mainly coming from China, the electricity cost, is this, and this means 50 cents per watt peak for the modules. Now we are already at 50 cents, about 60 yen per watt peak modules. This is the present situation, and 90% of the photovoltaic materials used worldwide is crystalline silicon, without question. Worldwide, 130 gigawatts of photovoltaics are installed. In Germany, we have at present 35. The whole market is shifting to Asia. There is this new world record. You mentioned it already, the backside contact cell from Panasonic. And my point, the whole point of my presentation is that the area-related cost is decisive. This means I will discuss under which conditions it makes sense to increase efficiencies, namely cost issues. Thank you for the question. Actually, we did not talk about that before. I have an opinion that probably only silicon modules in this regime with this efficiency survive, and probably no modules below that efficiency, and probably also no modules above that efficiency. You know, you can prove me wrong, I'm happy with it. Now, my conclusions, I start with the end, is face the reality. Silicon is the present and the future material. And improving solar efficiency gets harder and harder, that's obvious. Now, in future, probably the research shifts from cell materials and solar cells to applications. And we need characterization techniques for large area systems. I'm a semiconductor technologist and semiconductor scientist, and now I see that actually most of what I know is not needed anymore. It's already somewhere in a machine that runs a solar cell process. The machine does not care about surface recombination velocity and so on. Probably one does not need people like me anymore in future. But one needs people who know what happens in the cell, and they have to use that knowledge for characterization and improving of photovoltaic systems, complete systems. How do you measure current voltage characteristics over 1 megawatt photovoltaic plant, for example? How do you do that? I will present you one characterization technique which we developed, namely daylight system luminescence for the characterization of systems. Okay, now let's start with the electricity production cost, how it is at present in Germany and how it could be also in Japan. This transparency shows the production cost of photovoltaic electricity here versus the annual yield of a photovoltaic plant. Japan would, for example, be here, roughly that you get between 1,000 and 1,200 kilowatt hours from 1 kilowatt peak of your photovoltaic system. In Okinawa, you would get something like that here. Now, this is the installation cost. The installation cost in Germany for small systems is 1,500 euros per kilowatt peak, and for large systems, it's even below 1,000 euros per kilowatt peak. The yield of a photovoltaic system, for example, in my house in Stuttgart, is 1,000 kilowatt hours, and from here, I get the cost on this axis. This is in Germany, depending on how expensive the installation was, between 12 cents for the small area system and this one, 8 cents. And there is no reason why it couldn't be the same in Japan. Now, this calculation here, all these curves stem from this equation. This is the total installation cost, the 1,500 or the 1,000 here. This is the yield shown on this axis. This is the annuity factor. The annuity factor depends on interest rate. I assumed 5%, and I assumed here that the photovoltaic system runs over 20 years. Okay, remember 10 cents per kilowatt hour. This is the cost of photovoltaic electricity. Good. Clearly, further south, Cyprus, Spain, where there is more sun, or Okinawa would be even lower. In South Africa, it's again lower. This is reality. This is not future. Where are the systems installed? Here you see the whole world, the total power installed at the end of 2013, almost 140 gigawatts. In the past, most of it was installed in Europe, but now China is growing, Asia Pacific. You will have, you had 10 gigawatts, you said, last year. So here is the growth. It moves away from Europe. And which materials? Yeah, crystalline silicon. These are data collected from 1983 on. This is the share of crystalline silicon, and this is all thin film materials together, amorphous silicon, cadmium telluride, and CIGS. And the numbers are dropping and dropping, and probably they will drop further. I will show you later why this is the reason. It's not the reason that it's thin films. The reason is that it's low efficiency. Also, low efficiency crystalline silicon modules died out. Evergreen, Sovello, Schott, the EFG materials, the efficiency was simply too low, and that it was 14% for Sovello, for example. Okay, the predictions for 2015-16 stem from the literature. Good. Now, it's crystalline silicon, despite this wonderful table here. Now, how about concentrating solar cells? They do not show up in the statistics. And how about these materials? They also do not show up in the statistics. What is the reason? There's here almost nothing happened, seemingly, but now we have the crystalline silicon, you have a new world record of the 25.6. Now the reason why these other materials or these other cell technologies or module technologies die out is probably simply related to cost and the dependence of cost on efficiency. If it is too high, it's too expensive. If it's too low, it's also too expensive. Here I collected the area-related cost of a photovoltaic system, how it is built in Europe. Here you see the total cost here, which I used for calculation, was 1,000 euros per kilowatt peak for a large area system and 1,500 for a small area system. How is the share of the cost here? Now the modules are bought between 500 to 600 euros per kilowatt peak, 50 to 60 euro cents per watt peak. The mounting system, the metal, old-fashioned material, the cable, and the wages, what you have to pay your people, is in this range. And I'm cooperating with people who build systems. These numbers are real. The inverter, the communication, you want to see how well your system performs, you want to see it in the internet. The maintenance system, insurance, scaffold, if you build a small area system, and the profit of the installer, profit of installers is usually between 2 and 5%. This is fixed cost. Fixed cost, I mean, this part here does not depend on the kind and on the efficiency of the modules that you use. Whereas the mounting system, if you have high efficiency, you need less area, therefore less mounting system, you need shorter cables, and it takes not so long for you people to install the system. These balance of system costs, they depend on the module efficiency. And if you sum up, this is the largest share of the photovoltaic system. Now, this is clearly the sum here, and these two quantities, the module cost euros per watt peak, and here balance of systems, the installation cost per watt peak, they depend on the area and therefore on the module efficiency. What we usually discuss only is these photovoltaic modules, their efficiency and so on. Now when you take a 15% module and buy it for 50 cents per watt peak, the aerial cost is 75 euros per watt peak. This is cheaper than a window, for example. I compared it in January. I said it's the price of tiles and it's the price of brickstones. Now, I take a different point of view. I look at the system from the back. Look, this is 75 euros per square meter. But this is at least 30 euros per square meter. It's in the same range. And if you have a system which uses, for example, concrete, like I saw it here, it's even more expensive. This part here, the inverter, this is fixed cost. If you we discuss now what modules to take, for example, very high efficient modules or low efficient modules, it doesn't matter. This cost will be the same, but these will change. And I do this here. I do the following. I take the standpoint of an installer, and you want to sell me your highly efficient or your lower efficient modules. 15% modules are standard. Okay, I can buy them for 50 cents per watt peak, for example. I have to mention that these absolute numbers are not important. I could put any number here or here. The question is only, there is a standard of modules I can buy at the market, and you want to sell me a different module. As an installer, I make then a decision if I buy them or not. Okay. Now, if you sold me a higher efficient module, I would look at my balance of system cost. This is here I put, for example, 40 euros per square meter, a little bit high, but the typical cost for an installation. I have to pay 40 euros per square meter for installing these modules. If your module efficiency is higher, for example, 20% efficiency, I would just pay you 8 cents more and not more. Actually, I would not even pay you 8 cents. I would pay you 5 cents, and then I would take them. But for 8 cents, I would not take. This means for us, when we increase the module efficiency, we have only 8 cents per watt peak for coming from 15% to 20%. And by the way, if you would try to sell me modules for 30% efficiency, will be very, very, very hard to make them. Then I would just pay you 12 cents more, and not more. Okay, only if my installation cost is very high, I would pay you here, for 80 euros per square meter, for example, I would pay you 14 cents more. And it's clear that if your module efficiency is lower, I would not take it at all. This is the reason why everything dies out below 10%. For a 10% module, I would pay you about 15 cents less. This is 35 cents, and you cannot make the module for that price or for that production cost. We have to be aware of that fact that it's not the only goal to make high efficiency, but we have to consider the cost. And even if we get the high efficiency, maybe nobody will buy it.